Good afternoon, everybody. How is everybody doing out there? Welcome to Beyond 280. My name is Scott Allison. This is a show where we go beyond 280 characters on Twitter, basically to get to know the people behind the avatars, behind the anonymity on Twitter that we all sort of take for granted. And I'm hoping to get beyond that. So for people who don't know anything about my show, this is actually a big week for me, but anybody doesn't know anything about my show, the whole concept of Beyond 280 is to get beyond those 280 characters of the Twitter users you love to follow, that maybe you hate them, maybe you love them, maybe you don't even know them. But the idea is to maybe instill some empathy in their audience and to the other people that are kind of divisive and nasty and like to throw threats around and cancel people. That happens to be my subject today, cancel culture. But we'll get to that in a minute. But the idea is to basically interview the Twitter users, get to know them, get to know their humanity, get to know them on a deeper level as a human being, because that's ultimately, we're all human beings and we should all get along at some level. We're not always going to get along. That's the reality, right, Nailbender? But anyways, at some point we should at least get along. Even if we get along at arm's distance, that's fine. But I want to make sure that my part in all of this is that I maybe teach people a little bit of empathy along the way on social media, specifically in that Twitter niche that I'm living in right now. So, anyways, welcome. So today we're gonna talk about some people. Yeah, we're gonna talk about some awesome people that have been victimized. And not all these people are awesome, by the way, but these people have been victimized in one form or another. Maybe you've heard of the name Alexei McCammond. Maybe Adam Rubinstein. You may have heard of a little person named, I don't know, Abigail Schreier. Ever heard of those people? No? How about Dr. Seuss? We all heard of Dr. Seuss. I know anybody in America, at least, probably the world, has heard of Dr. Seuss, right? How about James Gunn? Anybody know who James Gunn is? James Gunn. Mike Lindell? Know who Mike Lindell is? How about Gina Carano? I think some of these names are probably ringing a bell. These are all people that essentially have fallen victim. To lack of a better term, I don't like to use the word woke, but it really is kind of a victim of a woke society, of a woke culture, that we've taken, things that we don't like, or maybe things we disagree with, even things we disagree as a whole, as a society, and said, well, anybody who thinks this particular way, we should cancel them, get rid of their livelihood, make sure they don't have a voice, make sure they don't have a seat at the table, regardless of what that opinion is. Even if it's something that, maybe that person as a teenager posted something on Twitter and got destroyed as a result of it 15 years later, or 10 years later, or 5 years later, whatever. We'll go into that example in a minute. I'm trying my best to bite my tongue and be nice about all of this. But we all know, we've all heard the term cancel culture. A lot of people think that the term cancel culture is really kind of a right-wing thing, and that we, people on the right have made it up. Well, I'd like to point out that one of the biggest victims of cancel culture is very far from right-wing, and she's called it out herself. That would be Mrs. J.K. Rowling, or Miss J.K. Rowling. Sorry, she's not married, I don't think, or either that she's using her maiden name. So J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter author, wrote a bunch of books, and she wrote a play. She's real famous. She's a gazillionaire, and yeah, so people started coming after her because she believed in women's rights. She didn't want women's rights to be harmed by other movements, and as a result, she's been branded. She's been branded as anti-LGBTQ. She's transphobic. She's hateful. She's a bigot. She's all these things, which if you take just even 10 minutes just to read any of her, opinions about any of these things, you would know quite easily that she is none of those things. It's quite clear she is none of those things. In fact, she is an advocate for trans rights. She's an advocate for LGBTQ and all the other letters that go with it. Now I can't keep up anymore, so that's my fault. I'm 50 years old, almost 50 years old, and it's hard for me to keep up with all the trends that happen out there. But regardless, she is very much not a right winger. Yet she has acknowledged that cancel culture is wickedly bad. So as you know, she basically, voiced an opinion that the transgender rights push that is out there today is actually doing harm to women's rights, and she has a lot of points about it. And she makes really good points. I'm not going to go into those at all, but what I want to talk about specifically is the backlash to it. So essentially, Twitter warriors and social media warriors, but I'll say Twitter warriors because that's what I'm focusing on, basically said that we should destroy her. We should make sure she can't have a livelihood anymore. We should, burn her books. We should cancel any chance, anytime she tries to speak up, we should all drown her out, because how dare she have an opinion? How dare she have an opinion? Because that's what cancel culture is. Cancel culture is when you or me or anybody has an opinion that might deviate slightly from what is a perceived majority. The reality is it's not a real majority. There are so many different thought processes and opinions and ideas that are floating around out there that it's really difficult to be in the majority anymore. I think a lot of people that are in the majority are live and let live. I'm one of those people, absolutely. I am a live and let live kind of guy. Do what you want as long as it's not hurting me or my neighbor or my children or what have you. Do what you want. I'm totally cool with it. But if I have an opinion about something, you don't get to tell me that I'm going to lose revenue, that I'm going to be deplatformed. That's just not right. So that's just one example. We can go even another one just a couple years ago. James Gunn. Anybody remember James Gunn? Yeah, we all remember this one. This was kind of a big deal. So James Gunn is a director, producer, screenwriter. He's kind of well known for doing Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, and which, by the way, I'm a huge Marvel fan. Those movies are great. I love all the actors in them. I love the stories. They're fantastic. Well, anyways, he got fired by Marvel. Why did he get fired by Marvel? Because the rage mob came after him for tweets from roughly 10, 11 years ago, where it looked like in most cases, these were taken out of context, but, let's put it this way, these were jokes that were done in extremely poor taste. Extremely poor taste. I mean, he was talking basically, joking around basically about pedophilia. Me personally, I would never joke about pedophilia. In fact, there was a I believe it was HBO or maybe it was Comedy Central. Anybody who knows, what is his name? Now I had it and now I forgot his name. The bald comedian guy. I think his name is Ed Norton. That doesn't sound right. Anyways, he's my wife and I sat down to watch his special and we're thinking, okay, this guy's supposed to be really funny, and he comes on and the first 15 minutes he's talking about pedophilia and he's joking about pedophilia, and we turned that shit off. I'm just not going to joke about pedophilia. Just not going to do it. I don't think it's funny. I think it's in poor taste. James Gunn on Twitter 10 years ago made some really kind of off-color, bad, pedophilia jokes essentially, and he got canceled for it. There was such a outrage on social media, and it really wasn't much of an outrage, that Marvel felt pressured to fire him. That's why? Because he's a piss poor comedian and he has a voice and he makes stupid jokes about pedophilia that you don't have to go and look at, you don't have to go and listen to. The man didn't, as far as we know, didn't actually harm a child. He didn't actually commit an act of pedophilia. He joked about it. Poor taste, yes. Fireable? Why? Why? Especially as old as these comments were. So yeah, I'm up to here with cancel culture, and the straw that really kind of broke. I mean, I've been watching it for years, and the straw that really kind of broke the camel's back for me was Gina Carano. So as it goes, Gina Carano is always, in her life was always a very apolitical person. She was didn't really know a lot about politics. Let's put it that way. She just kind of had her head down. She was doing what she was doing with her MMA and getting into film and acting and that sort of thing. And it wasn't really until recently that she started getting interested in politics. And when she did, she gravitated conservative. Now, in her defense, she doesn't really know a lot about a lot. I've seen some of the things she's posted on Twitter, and I've seen her take down stuff that she's posted on Twitter because somebody had to come explain to her, well, that's not right, or that's factually incorrect, or whatever. And so she's gladly taken it down. She's not that plugged in. She's learning, but she's not that plugged in. So she got in trouble for putting beep bop boop in her profile on Twitter. Not understanding what the hullabaloo was about putting pronouns in your Twitter bio. I don't understand the hullabaloo myself. Neither here nor there. She got, basically, everybody was telling everybody, or the rage mob was coming after her and saying, you got to, Disney, you need to fire her. You need to fire, this actress from The Mandalorian because she put beep bop boop in her profile. So as the story goes, she went and actually talked to the star. Oh, what is his name? Why can't I remember his name now? Diego. Yeah. Anyways, he basically talked to her about it, and said, "Hey, look, this is why it's kind of a problematic thing. You maybe probably shouldn't put that in there, whatever." And so she deleted it. She was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." I thought it was kind of funny, but okay, I'll delete it. And she deleted it, and she had a target on her back from then on. In fact, the Fire Gina Carano hashtag went on for quite a while, and then she posted a factually accurate statement about how it was regular Germans that went after the Jews before the Holocaust. They were the first ones. They were egged on by the Nazis, of course, but they were the first ones. They were the neighbors of these Jews, the neighbors' children of these Jews that went after them and persecuted them before the Holocaust, before World War II. And it was a factual statement. And in fact, multiple Jewish leaders have come out and said what she posted was not offensive in any way. It was just a factual statement. Now, in context, it made it look like she was talking about, well, this is how conservatives are being treated today. And yeah, you probably don't want to, equate, Holocaust and being canceled by the left, or Holocaust and being, having a disagreement with the left, or the left hating you so much, or the right hating the left so much, or whatever. Just don't equate anything with the Holocaust. Again, in her defense, she's still learning all of this stuff. A lot of us kind of grew up learning this stuff. I'm one of them. A lot of people just kind of learned it in school and then forgot about it, and just now coming back around to it. So anyways, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and, well, Lucasfilm and Disney fired her. And they didn't even fire her with a courtesy phone call. They fired her on social media, which is awesome. And the reason why? Twitter. Social media. They pushed so hard, or the few people that did, pushed so hard that they got her fired. Now, granted, she's landed on her feet, and you kind of get that about her. You figure that she probably would. She seems pretty tough. And she's got a new movie deal and producing deal, that she's going to be taking care of here in the next year or so. So good for her. I'm glad she was able to overcome it. But there's some people that are financially hurt by this cancel culture. Let's talk about Abigail Shrier. So Abigail Shrier wrote a book called Irreversible Damage. And for some reason it's controversial. So I've not read the book. I've read excerpts, but I've read reviews from multiple different people all over the spectrum who've all basically said that it's a really thought-provoking book. And it's full of lots of facts and a lot of case studies of basically transgender girls and what it is that they go through, and kind of their journey and what kind of damage, this journey had been for them, their trans journey had been for them. And doesn't make any sweeping statement about, oh, well, this is, we should be, converting, trans girls or trans boys. We should be, changing their body, or, the book makes no claims like this. It just kind of lays out the case as to these girls specifically, these case studies she does specifically, how this journey has harmed them. And it is what it is. It's facts. And so a handful of activists went ballistic online. They didn't go ballistic at the local bookstore. They didn't go ballistic, at her, place of residence or anything like that. They went ballistic online. And again, it wasn't a very large number of people. Target, because this was the store that people targeted, went after her and pulled her book from the shelves. Again, she's fortunate because within a few days they put her book back on the shelf because they didn't find fault with it. But the damage was done. And now she's a controversial figure just for writing a book that had some facts in it. That's cancel culture. That's what it is. It's a damaging culture in society that is hurting real people. Another example would be Alexei McCammon. This is a very recent one. Alexei McCammon, so let's back up a second. If anybody knows anything about Teen Vogue, they are a magazine that is in recent years become extremely progressive. So they're constantly talking about very very liberal, very progressive ideas and pushing that narrative in their magazine. That's their prerogative. It's kind of their brand now. And cool, good for them. They're probably making money doing it. Alexa McCammon comes on as an editor, as I think she was the editor-in-chief, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, she came on, and within a month or two, I can't remember the exact time frame, she was booted. She was fired because she made comments about Asian people's eyes when she was 17. So 10 years ago on Twitter, stupid little girl, 17 years old, made some offhanded comment about Asian people's eyes. I don't know about you, but I think everybody should be fired for every off-color thing they've ever said or thought. How about you? You think that's great? So let's look at this a little bit. A lot of amazing talent has been canceled in the last 10 years. It's sad. At the same time, I guess you have to ask, is the art separate from the artist? That's a good point, Kevin. So yes, in some cases it is. Think about James Gunn is a good example of this. Everybody, including Chris Pratt, who's no progressive. He's not a liberal. He's kind of more moderate to right. But he defended James Gunn vehemently about these jokes. And that's a separation. They were in poor taste. The jokes were in poor taste. I can separate the two. I'm not a very smart dude, but I can separate the two. Why can't anybody else? Why did they come after him so hard? Because they felt like, and this goes to the whole onus of my show, they felt like even though some of these people were probably higher tier Twitter users, verified users, or users with lots of followers, many of them, a lot of the louder ones, are still pretty anonymous behind that Twitter avatar, behind that Twitter name. There's very little accountability needed to be a Twitter user. In fact, there's none. You don't have to be accountable for anything that you say or do, unless, of course, you talk about the C word, the pandemic thing that we're going around, or if you talk about anything about the election that is not, the current narrative, or you talk anything about, specific topics without like having the right narrative. You know what? Twitter shouldn't be doing any of this stuff to us. But anyways, that's a topic for another day. Probably explore it during one of my interviews. But yeah, cancel culture is predominant on Twitter because of that anonymity, because people can yell and scream and bitch and moan all they want and target people all they want, and they don't even have to know the facts. They could just hear it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who, and that's, now it's gospel, and they can just yell it and scream it until they're blue in the face. And you know the story about the squeaky wheel, right? It gets the grease. And so people like James Gunn, Gina Carano, Abigail Schreier, Dr. Seuss. Let's go back to Dr. Seuss. What does Nailbender have to say? Because everyone thinks your rights here end where their feelings begin. That's a really good point. Emotions, and I'm very guilty of this myself, emotions are very powerful. In fact, there was a study done specifically about the concept of fight or flight, which is the decision for fight and flight is like a nanosecond, right? And it's at the, they basically traced it in the brain, and it's at the forefront of everything that a human being does. So it comes from a time when we had to be scared of being eaten by a bear or gored by a mastodon, right? Or we had to live up in the trees because we could have gotten killed by an animal on the ground. It's a very powerful thing in our brain that has not gone away. Evolution has not cleansed us of this yet. I think it will at some point, but it has not yet. And so it's a very emotional, raw response. And it's the first thing when that input comes in, that's the first thing it passes through. And so as a result, we make a lot of emotional decisions, a lot of knee-jerk emotional decisions. And what we have to do as human beings is train ourselves to pause, let that percolate, and then react. Because when we stop and we think about these things and we become logical beings, we take it a step beyond the emotional reaction. Then we start going, oh, wait a second, this is probably doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm probably hurting somebody by saying this or acting this way or doing this. So once you've learned to kind of process before reacting, then you realize you have a choice. You have a choice to behave this way. You have a choice to fly off the handle. And a lot of this is because of that emotional response. That emotional response that we all, again, I'm not, saying that I don't do it. I definitely do. I have an anger problem. But my anger problem has gotten less because I've started training myself to not react immediately, but to essentially think it through. I'm still working on it, and it's never going to be perfect because I'm not perfect. We are all human beings. We are not perfect. So that's actually a really, really good point about feelings, Nailbender. And I think is that L Walton 3765. I think you're Lisa. Am I right? This is why you have to be careful about what you post. Why? I agree. Don't get me wrong. I definitely agree, especially if you want to be successful at anything. Probably shouldn't post anything online just to be safe, to be quite honest. But why should we? I should not have to bow to, and I love you guys. I love all my viewers, all 5 of you, 10 of you, however many there are now. I love you guys, but I'm not going to be pressured into not being who I am, right? Into being somebody else, just because it's a controversial opinion or a controversial thought or make an off-color joke. I'm not a hater. I don't go around hating on people. I'm definitely not I'm not a racist. I'm not a misogynist or anything like that. But I make some funny jokes sometimes about women and about men and about gay people and about, people of color and about white people and about everything. I'm an equal opportunity offender when it comes to my humor and how I talk and that sort of thing. I'm kind of like a South Park, if you will. That's one of the reasons why I think South Park is so important these days. Yes, I said South Park's important because it is very counterculture. It tackles a lot of these issues without actually saying that what it's actually tackling. It's an equal opportunity offender, and that's why I like South Park so much. Grim. The problem is that speech is being elevated to an act of violence, and that the slightest deviation from a perceived narrative is treated like an outright assault. So it must be crushed. Let me bring that back up. So it must be crushed. Instead of engaging in a civil debate to dissuade or persuade the easily offended, would rather silence the offenders. That is an extremely smart take, Grimskull. And it's reality. That's just the reality. And again, it goes back to, in fact, let me bring this up one more time. You made a really good point here at the end. Would rather silence the offenders. I take a lot of displeasure with that last sentence, and the reason why is because I do not have the power to offend anybody. It's not within my power. I cannot get into your brain and throw that little switch that says you're offended. I can't do it. That is a decision you have to make. I've made it myself. I get offended, but it's a decision I make when I decide to react a specific way. If somebody says something to me and I fly off the handle and I get offended, because I've made that choice to do that. People give everybody else too much credit. I hate to say it. Yeah. A person can only be offended if they allow themselves to be. That's absolutely right. So be careful about what to post for what, so I don't hurt someone else's feelings. GTFO. Oh, be nice, Nail. Just because you don't like what I have to say doesn't mean I don't have the right to say it. Block me and move it along. Right. So the Dr. Seuss thing. I was going to come to that. Dr. Seuss, who and his real name, I'm lost with his real name here, but he started doing books and children's stuff back in the 30s, I think. And it was a very different time, extremely different time. And it was accepted that you could put art and say certain things that today would be problematic, right? So it was a different time, a different mindset, completely different mindset as a society. Not just his mindset. All of society accepted this as normal behavior. So now people want to cancel Dr. Seuss. They want to have book burnings. They want to have virtual book burnings. They want to remove the history, the backstory, if you will, of Dr. Seuss. Because he, had some characters that were in blackface, essentially. Okay. This goes again. This isn't. This goes along with the whole idea of erasing history when it comes to the Civil War. And so what was the guy with the Bachelor and the whole antebellum party and all of that? That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. You can't erase history. It happened. Things happened. People thought differently back then. Oh no. How dare they think differently? We must cancel anything and everything because their ancestors or they themselves way back in the day believed a certain way. There was a time when slavery was an accepted practice. I'm being real here. There was a time when slavery was an accepted practice in the United States, before we even were the United States. It was accepted. It was just, it is what it is. So, should we pretend that slavery didn't happen? We should erase history. We should erase that slavery didn't happen. Or should we instead learn from our history? Maybe, teach each other, some good lessons about it. I don't know. Dr. Seuss, great example. We should be looking at these books and going, you know what? This type of imagery, at the time was an accepted thing, but you know what, kids? This is not cool today. It just isn't. It's not accepted, not really acceptable, and that's fine. But look at all this other stuff that Dr. Seuss did. He reached, millions upon millions of children. And we're going to let a couple of blackface pictures and a couple of problematic, lines. Problematic. I hate using that word, but I got to in order to use the language of the day. You're going to let that kind of steer, your perception of this one man. I'm not happy about it. And this is uniquely a social media problem. If we didn't have social media, we wouldn't be talking about these things because they don't become a thing. They don't become clicks. And yeah. So Lisa, it's not you per se, but the public is very fickle. And if you make a statement as a real person, the fake powers that be tear folks, I need to change that. Sorry. Tear folks down because you speak your honest truth. Right. Debate is frowned upon. Honest debate is frowned upon. A good example. So I'm going to show off something here. The Creators Guild. Why is this a good example? So our good friend and fearless, tireless guild leader, David Foster, had a YouTube video up where he was streaming a C-SPAN hearing. Basically in Congress, there was a hearing that was being shown on C-SPAN that was talking about I think it was a specific drug that could potentially help with COVID-19. Potentially. It was a discussion. There was a debate about it. And he got struck down. He got suspended for a week because how dare he show some sort of debate on anything? That's a cardinal sin. Yeah, it was levermectin. That's right. It was levermectin. And, that's a cardinal sin. You don't dare talk about science. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't dare talk about not the preferred science, but your own science or somebody else's science. Not the preferred science or the accepted science. The climate change debate. For clarity, I am on the side that the climate is changing. There's no doubt in my mind. Ooh, hey, my dog thinks that the climate is changing as well. Thank you, Shankly. That's Mr. Shankly, by the way. If you're wanting to know who Shankly is, if you ever listen to the Smiths, and Nailbender, I don't think you would have ever listened to the Smiths. Maybe I'm wrong. But the Smiths had a song called "Frankly, Mr. Shankly." That's where he gets his name. Not because he's a barker. He is a barker. He barks at just about everything. But because he's cool. Anyways, where was I? Oh, levermectin. Or ivermectin, whatever the hell it's called. So he got struck down for talking, how dare he talk about COVID-19? And then the climate change debate. I believe the climate is changing. Absolutely. However, I'm also a little bit of a cynic. And I don't necessarily accept the accepted science that it's 100% man-made. It's not. And the reason why I say that is because there's lots of science out there that say other things, that talk about solar activity, that talk about, other things that are going on in the natural occurrences of climate, the natural cycles of the earth. That a lot of the science is basically, they're not really looking at as part of their models. And that's fine. That's what science is, right? But I can be canceled for having that opinion. In fact, if I was a big user, if I had a verified user, and I started saying stuff like that, I'd probably get canceled. I'd probably get banned from Twitter for saying stuff like, that solar activity has something to do with the climate. Just saying, it's pretty strong indicators that solar activity has a very strong influence on the climate. I would get in trouble for that. That's what cancel culture is. Not being able to speak your mind, your opinion on things. So. Okay. So do you like the Smiths? That's the answer. That's the question. Oh, I'm going to get canceled. You're right, Kevin. Kevin, I'm probably going to get canceled. I'm a big nobody who's going to get canceled. So who else got canceled? Here's somebody I don't agree with politically. Matthew Iglesias. This guy's a piece of work. He's absolutely a piece of work, especially on Twitter. Boy, is he a piece of work on Twitter. But I got to side with him on this. So Mr. Matthew Iglesias, he was a writer at Vox, and for those of you who know, Vox is a very progressive rag. It's very left-leaning. And they make no allusions to the contrary, unlike Fox News, who says, "Oh, we're not conservative or liberal." Whatever, you're on the right. But basically, he got canceled for thinking that using the term Latin X instead of Latino or Latina was kind of dumb. So people hate him for that. People on his side too hate him for that. That he didn't like the term Latinx. Oh, he also wasn't a big fan of defunding the police. And neither am I. I kind of like the fact that if I need to call the police, they're there. It's kind of awesome. But he got canceled for both those things, and so it caused a lifestyle change for him. He had to go basically out on his own, and now he's on Substack, and apparently he's doing okay, I guess. I don't know. I don't really read a lot of his stuff, but So Nail gets banned from Twitter regularly. Made it a game to speed run it and see how quickly it happens now. Very nice. All it takes, Nailbender, is one person. One outraged individual will get you banned. That's the way it works. That's what cancel culture has become now. It's no longer the rage mob. It's the rage couple of people. Or the rage, 5 people. That's all it takes nowadays to be canceled. It doesn't take an actual mob anymore. No more pitchforks, no more fire, no more national headlines. Just a few angry people. And that's it. And Kevin, who I know is on the left, I can tell. I've read your posts. You're on the left. I still love you anyways. But you're quite political on Twitter. Good for you. And you try to have educated discussions based on facts. Awesome. That's all I'm asking. Is for us to show a little respect with each other and just have debate. Even heated debate. I'm totally cool with having an emotional, heated debate. But when you come after me and try to cancel me or you try to cancel anybody else, you are barking up the wrong tree. Do we need to educate ourselves with each other? Absolutely. But not to the point where you're changing livelihoods. All the more reason to follow Kevin. Fact on Twitter, where the hell do find those at? What are you smoking, Nail? I don't understand what you're saying there. Yes, Zuckerberg's going to cancel me. He's watching me. Mr. Guy with the 7 viewers on his little show. I'm going through the comments here, see what everybody else is talking about. Yeah, you all had a pretty robust conversation while I was, flapping my gums. Okay, so let's. I'm going to talk about one more thing, and what the heck? Why am I Derek Moore? I don't know, Grim. Why are you Derek Moore? Who the hell is Derek Moore? Facts. Oh, facts on Twitter. Where the hell do you find those at? You don't. Not on Twitter. You don't find those facts on Twitter. Although a lot of people do use Twitter as their news source. I use it as my oftentimes as my starting point. Right? I will see something come up on Twitter and I'll go, oh, well, that's interesting. Let's go see what that's about. And then I end up leaving Twitter and actually doing my own research. I think that alone gets you banned nowadays. Doing your own research and actually looking for the facts on your own. How dare you not just read the headlines and automatically agree? So the last thing I want to talk about is how sometimes cancel culture backfires. And I love it when it backfires. It makes me so happy. So I'll tell you a quick story. And because I love instant karma. Instant karma is one of my favorite things. One of these, these philosophical things that some people believe in. That you can have instant karma. In other words, you do something good and immediately you're paid back for it. where you do something bad and immediately you're paid for it, right? So my favorite story is come home late one night and I stop at Jack in the Box. It's like 3 in the morning. I'd been out with my friends, whatever, and I was like I was like 25, 26, so I was still pretty young. I'm an old man now, according to Cy. But went to the Jack in the Box and I pull up, behind another vehicle that's full of dudes. And I know this because they were rowdy as hell. So they're at the little speaker thingy and they're trying to do their order or whatever. And they're yelling at the guy on the other end, and so a couple bottles get thrown out, and they crash on the concrete. A guy gets out and actually takes a piss right there in the parking lot, and they're just being rowdy and rude. And they pull up, and I order my food, and I'm being nice, and I pull up behind them, and they're being rowdy again. They get out of the car, and they're sticking their head in the window of the drive-through, and just being awful, awful, awful. You could tell they were all drunk or on drugs or something. And they finally, get their food and they peel out and they take off. Like, I pull up to the window and I said to the guy, I said, "Man, I'm sorry you had to go through that. That sucks." Like, "Yeah, these guys are being jerked." I'm like, "Yeah, sorry about that." And, so anyway, I got my food and put in my seat and I pull out and go down the street. And I kid you not, 3 blocks down, sirens. Well, flashing lights, and that car is pulled over. And I'm like, yes, instant karma. Love it. Anyways, doesn't have a whole lot to do with what I'm about to talk about, but love instant karma. Goya Foods. This was a great story. This is one of my favorite cancel culture stories because it had a wonderfully happy ending. So first of all, for those of you who don't know who Goya Foods is, it's a Hispanic family owned and operated food company. They make a lot of delicious foods. My favorite, and if you haven't tried it, is the black bean soup. It is the bomb. So my wife is Hispanic, and her family is from Nicaragua and Cuba. While her grandmother from Nicaragua used to make the most awesome black beans. Goya's black beans are almost as good as that. That's saying something. So anyways, neither here nor there. The Goya food's great. The chief executive of Goya had the audacity, how dare him, basically, at an event in the White House, basically praised Trump. Another point of clarity here. I can't stand Trump. I can't stand the man. I've never been able to stand him. I thought he was bad for the country. He made some okay decisions with some stuff, but he was not a good person. I wish he had gotten impeached. Let's put it that way, because Pence is far better a man. But anyway, neither here nor there. He goes up and had the audacity to basically, say that Trump was a blessing for America and for business. He's probably good for business. I'll give him that. But and he was a blessing for Hispanic Americans. That was the other point he made. He's that Mr. Trump was a blessing for Hispanic Americans. Well, how dare he? How dare this Hispanic man go up in front of everybody and say, Mr. Trump is good for Hispanics? How dare he? Oh, that makes me so angry. I want to boycott Goya. I want to cancel Goya. And so that's what people tried to do. They tried to cancel Goya. And the backlash was swift and complete. It was the most awesome thing in the world. Instead of a boycott, it turned into a boycott. And in a time during the pandemic when restaurant sales were through the floor, and Goya, they sell a lot to restaurants, Goya's profits went up 70% because of the backlash of cancel culture, of this cancel culture. Thank you. It was so awesome. And the reason why Goya is freaking awesome. Goya is freaking awesome. Oh, KMR. People who actually research preliminary sources, and if those people tweet, then they are tweeting facts. Be careful with that. I That's not my first reaction when I see something, even from an intelligent person. A lot of people I follow on Twitter are very conscientious and intelligent. I still do my own research. So I don't just immediately accept it as fact. Yes, this is true. This is true, Lisa. You are absolutely right. And y'all can have Twitter fights now. And I think yep. There we go. Twitter fights. I'm loving it. And oh boy. Now the guild is connected on Twitter. What have I done? What have I done? I'm really... So, guys, I'm going to start wrapping it up here shortly. But wanted to, again, talk about specifically the Creators Guild. For those of you who are creating content or want to create content and haven't started yet, come join us at the Creators Guild. We are a group of just people that are creating content and learning from each other and getting together and having some laughs and talking tech and talking strategy and that sort of thing, and having a lot of fun with it. I really want to also point out the Creator Toolkit. So this is a group of or a collection of videos. Thank you, Sai. But this is a collection of videos and worksheets and stuff like that, free, that our illustrious guild leader, Mr. David Foster, has put together for people who want to get started in content creation, get started live streaming or podcasting or vlogging or whatever it is that you're interested in doing. Come hang out with us. Go check out the toolkit. All of this is absolutely free, and it's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I've been rattling this around in my brain for a long time, and joined many different groups and didn't get a lot of value out of them, even though I was learning left and right, watching all sorts of videos and joined a bunch of groups. I just didn't get a lot of value until I started hanging out with Dave Foster online and the guild, and it gave me the tools I needed, personally, to get over that hump and start streaming. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing today. So, and I'd like to put special shout out to Sai, who's on right now for the graphics. This animation specifically was done by Grinskull, and that's the sort of thing you get at the Creators Guild. That's the sort of collaboration you're going to find at the Creators Guild. Guildies are the best. Yes, they are. They are absolutely the best. Who's a mess? Needs to create affiliate links for all the creators. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything about that because I think something like that's coming. Yes, bunch of wonderful mofos. We are a bunch of wonderful mofos. Well, at least y'all are. I'm just a schlub with a camera and a mic. So what I wanted to do real quick is talk to you also. If you like the show, you want to give me some feedback, you want to hook up with me on Twitter, here's my contact information, beyond280, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Would love to hear from you what do you think about the show? What do you think about the content? Again, these solo videos are going to be kind of like fillers during the week, because starting Wednesday, I'm going to be interviewing people. And that's really where the real content is going to come from. It's going to come from the actual creators of the posts that you like to follow, or that you hate, or you like, or you reply to, and you see all the hate and vitriol and all that from all the people responding to it. That's my meat. That's where I'm going to really start digging in and providing value by showing people that these are human beings, right? Just like I was saying before, that these are human beings. Yes, they're behind an avatar. Yes, they're behind a username. They're still human beings. And what I'm hoping to do is reach that one person, maybe a dozen people, maybe 50 people, I don't know, and make them think twice before they react. Make them kind of pause in that part of their brain that wants to emotionally lash out and emotionally react, to pause and take a second and think it through and show some empathy. So yeah, definitely give me some feedback, but definitely come back on Wednesday at 4 p.m. when I'm going to have a very, very special guest, my very first interview. And this is where the real stuff starts happening, where the real meat of what I'm trying to do starts happening. I'm extremely excited, a little bit nervous. In fact, I'm a lot nervous. And if you don't like the show, you can take a flying leap. In fact, why don't you go ahead and do that, Kevin? Can you video for that? Take a a long walk off a short pier. Can you go ahead and video that for us? I know you're all into video production and stuff like that. So I'd really like to see maybe a drone shot of you taking a flying leap. I think that would be so awesome. Just kidding. I love you, Kevin. And my dog is now sneezing, which is awesome. I hope y'all heard that because that was so funny. Your question is now ruined. What question? Did I miss something? It would be gorgeous to watch. Well, yes, we're all disagreeable at this age, Grim. I mean, that's just what we are. We're disagreeable at this age. Can't help it. Can't help it. And yeah, and as usual, if you feel the need, feel the want, you like me, you really like me, you can always, you can always do that. I'm just saying. I'm always thirsty for coffee. But anyways, I want to thank everybody for coming out. Oh, you had a question for your guest next Wednesday. Oh, hold on to it. Be there. Be here. If you don't, hey, Sai, if you don't make it to the next show for some reason, first of all, you're going to make me very sad if you don't. But if you don't, shoot me an email and send me the question, and I will consider it for the show. But you're going to want to come and check this out. I know you're going to want to come and check this out. But greetings, everybody. Salutations. Have a great evening. I will see you on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central when I'll have my first guest.